This is insane.
Yeah, it's in Kenya.
Now, I can attest to this because I'm from South Africa, obviously, and the same thing happened in South Africa.
Yeah.
So, do you want to explain what's going on?
Oh, there's just a big protest going on right now because of the preferential treatment for the government that has on Chinese businesses, which is pushing out locals from the business sector, right?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Well, no, yeah, you're right. It is what it is. But how it works is when, let's say you're a business owner in Kenya, okay? And you run let's say somebody runs a store. Okay, so what you do is you get your supplies from China. You go to Guangzhou, you go look in the things, you pick out, okay, I want to import these clothes and I want to
Winston
import
and I
these.
used to roll around there. I used to hang out with the African people there and be like, how's business? And they would tell me crazy stories because like they end up there in such weird circumstances.
Yeah,
and then they go to these massive wholesalers in this huge mall. It's like industrial mall where you can buy anything and they buy sacks of it to send back to Africa.
So they put all this effort in. So you own a shop. You've put in all this effort of, basically building a reputation in your neighborhood. You've got your shop. You bring in all this stuff from China and you're selling it. Yeah. Okay. It costs you money to import it. Okay. It costs you money to fly over there to source it. Yeah. And it costs you money to run your shop, rent your shop, and you sell the stuff, right? Yeah. And what's been happening is, and this happened in South Africa too, is the Chinese businessmen, okay, who are selling this stuff to them, they're like, oh, there's a market in Kenya for whatever, these clothes and this toy. So what they do is they go directly to Kenya, they set up their own shop, they import it through their channels. And remember, I talked about in the Temu video where they can get free shipping because of China's developing country status. So they import it into Kenya much cheaper than the locals can. And then they sell it at a much discounted price than the locals are selling it. So what they do is they end up undercutting everybody. So the dude who's put in all the effort to have the shop for 10 years or whatever, however long he's been doing it, selling his stuff, is now being undercut by the guy that he went to go and try and buy stuff from and source goods from. So the Chinese businessmen have undercut and taken over the entire supply chain. So not only are they the suppliers, they're also the importers, and they're also now the sellers. And they're even like the street guys who hawk on the side of the road and have a cloth and they sell goods. The Chinese businessmen are doing that too. So they've cut everyone out of the local economy from this. So many people are losing their livelihoods because they can't compete. It's impossible because they don't play it by the rules. And they bribe the local governments because most governments have mechanisms in place to prevent this sort of thing, right? To protect the local economy. But when the Chinese, government or these Chinese businessmen have bribed the local governments, and in Africa it's all corruption, right? Those fail-safes go away.
And remember, this is a Chinese government initiative to support these endeavors, to make sure they have a foothold in these countries.
So those go away and the local people end up suffering because now all the local businessmen that were selling stuff, they can't compete. The people that used to go and source these things, who actually created that market in the first place, have been pushed out.
Yes, and Nathaniel Hayes, I just want to say, China has created systemic economic inequality in Africa in favor of the CCP. That's quite literally what they're doing.
That's correct. And it's so underhanded. And like they take advantage of those bullshit World Trade Organization rules and things. And
WTO and WF, oh my gosh, the more we look into this.
It's awful because, hey, like I said, when I was in China, I remember it's very, very clearly, there's a buddy of mine runs a YouTube channel. It's called Retro Man Cave, or RMC, does computer stuff.
The channel.
And I wanted to send him a Chinese computer. And it was very expensive to send. Okay, so I'm living in China, so I'm at the source. But for me to send it, because I wasn't Chinese or a Chinese company, it still cost me a lot of money. But the Chinese companies that can send like a $2 widget, or they send a container ship full of stuff, they pay no shipping because they take advantage of the government subsidies and the United Postal Union or whatever, Universal Postal Union, all this crap, and so they can send shit for free. So it's not fair. And so these Chinese businessmen that go into Kenya and South Africa and so on, they use those systems and they ship all their crappy cheap goods that they're going to sell to them for free. It's not fair. And so that's why we're having these protests in Kenya. They're like, stop the China invasion is literally what they're saying.
This is happening across Africa, by the way. In multiple countries. Uganda had a big issue with it. Ghana right now is going through a big thing. And this just, you're going to see a lot of pushback. China's doing this imperialism thing very sloppily.
Yeah.
And they're pissing off the locals.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're buying up corrupt governments, which is exactly what they like to do.
Yeah.
Then they go back to China and domestic propaganda, and they'll say, look at how much aid we're giving Africa.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually ends up hurting the local communities because,
big time.
Again, with all these Belt and Road initiatives and stuff they promise local jobs.
Yep.
But then they import all the labor from China.
Turns out imperialism is bad.
Yeah, it is.
But all these anti-imperialist organizations are backing China.
Isn't it crazy?
The neo-imperialist power of this world.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, just so you know, this is happening, and it's big. I've seen footage of what's going on in Kenya right now,
It's
and
wild,
they're really pissed off. So we'll see where this goes.
Kenyans are good folk. Seriously.
Now, if you're talking Africa, I think Kenya is probably the best country.
Yeah, it's
I'm
awesome.
from Africa.
It's a powerhouse, definitely.
It's not as developed as South Africa.
Sure.
But it's better than South Africa. They don't have power outages every day.
This is
You're
true.
less likely to be murdered in
That's
Kenya
true.
every minute.
It's a good place.
Yeah,
Anyway.
no, Kenya is great, friendly, fantastic.
Kenya.
If you're going to go safari in South Africa,
Go to
if that's your
Kenya,
thing,
not
go
South
to,
Africa.
don't go to South Africa. Go to South Africa if you want to get murdered and raped, and then is it raped? Then it's murdered,
You
raped,
never
and
know.
murdered, and then
You
raped
never know
again.
what order.
I think it's first murdered, then raped.
Okay.
Okay, and then burned.
And then burned.
Yeah. Do that.
Go to
But
Kenya.
seriously, go to Kenya. They're awesome, friendly, fantastic, wonderful country.
There's a protest going on in Guiyang, and I'll tell you why. Big protest going on because and I want you guys to understand, this is like a copy-paste event across the entire nation. They promised investors that their building would be complete. The building wasn't complete, but they already bought the houses.
Yeah.
The end. It's quite literally China in a nutshell. All these unfinished infrastructure projects and housing projects that people buy,
Yeah.
and they don't get.
They don't.
Default.
Yeah, they don't. Like the building never gets completed and it gets demolished or something, but they've already spent the money.
Yes.
It's very common. The real estate sector in China's got big issues right now. Let's put it that way.